Perfect. There we go. Welcome, everyone. I'm really excited to get to spend some time with you as we get ready for Passover. I am Rabbi Micah. My pronouns are he and him, and I am the Director of Education and Training with Keshet. And I am on this call from St. Louis, Missouri, which is where I live and where I work from. We have actually all of our education and training team on the call today, and a number of us are going to share some of our favorite and queerest moments and rituals from the Passover Seder. Just as a side note, part of why I am so excited to be with everyone today is that this year in particular, I am missing my queer fam. I am missing the LGBTQ folks in my life who, particularly at Passover and really all of the time in the year, are the folks with whom I thrive most. And it's my hope that many of us who might be hoping to be in community and connection with one another can take this pre-Passover opportunity to reach out, to learn together, to think about the holiday together, and to just be a little bit closer to one another. Before we get started, I want to make sure that I give one more note about what's happening, which is that we are not presenting a queer Seder. We are not running through a Haggadah from beginning to end with every step of the way, with the expectation that that is the way to do it. But a number of us are going to share highlight our favorite moment or tradition or custom or symbol and how we put an LGBTQ lens on that or draw wisdom from our lived experiences as we approach the Seder. And hopefully folks who are joining this call are able to share a number of those favorite rituals, moments, highlight, reading, thoughts with us, and that all of us will have a chance to be enriched by one another's knowledge. As a rabbi, I am really committed to the idea that we don't have to be rabbis in order to bring our expertise and our lived experiences to the tradition. Some of my most influential teachers in my life have been the people who said, first and foremost, the Seder itself is this self-made, radical, a little bit messy, a little bit unpolished, or a lot of it unpolished reaction of a group of people who needed to create ritual that spoke to them when the world as they knew it fell apart. And I think that that's very much an invitation for this to be an ongoing process of growth and of addition and of our bringing our own experiences to create ritual that speak to us now in this moment. And I'm totally excited to hear from everybody who's here. I would love to start us off by talking about some of the symbols that are present at the Seder. And I'm going to ask Essie to jump in and take us through some of the things we have in front of us at a Seder table.
Essie, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Hello, I'm Essie. I use they, them, theirs. I'm calling from Chicago. I'm on the education and training team with Keshet. And I'm going to be talking about some of the symbols or the queer symbols that we can put on our Seder plate and on our Seder table this year. I'm going to do a little like cheesy show and tell and like hold up some fun things, the ones that I have anyway. So as we know, Passover is filled with symbolism, and symbols are really powerful reminders of sort of where we've been, where we are, where we want to go. And as we retell our stories of where we've been and where we're going, we have the opportunity to include some new symbols that are meaningful to us, which I think is really wonderful. And as queer folks and allies, we have hopefully feel empowered to add new symbols to our tables. So the first like queer symbol, which is maybe the one that most folks have heard of, is an orange. So Susanna Heschel, who happens to be the daughter of Abraham Joshua Heschel, is a professor of Jewish studies at Dartmouth. And she decided to start this tradition of including an orange on the Seder plate in recognition of LGBTQ Jews and others who are marginalized in the Jewish community. And she has this ritual where each person at the table takes a segment of the orange, says a blessing over the fruit, and then spits out the seeds. And the idea is spitting out the seeds and rejecting the seeds of homophobia that exist in our community. Really interestingly is the roots of this story and this custom have been really obscured and are really unclear. So there's lots of different myths of how this orange ended up being on our table, one of which was one that I heard, and actually like the first iteration of this I heard was this idea that some man said women belong on the bima, like an orange on the Seder plate, and so now we have an orange on the Seder plate, and that's not actually what happened, but I think interesting and important to note that like so many of our stories, our traditions have been like misattributed to men, when really that is not how it came about. So I think it's important to remember who came up with these new symbols for us. So that's the orange. Another one of my favorites is Miriam's cup, which I don't have a beautiful cup to show you, but Miriam's cup is just a cup or a glass of water that you put next to Eliyahu or Elijah's cup. And it is to sort of represent this Miriam's well, which is what kept the Israelites watered in the desert, and to remind us of the contributions of women in our history, which are often overlooked and misattributed. Another symbol that we can include, and I'm sort of zooming out from like lowercase q to uppercase q of like queer generally and queering our Seder. So the next few are not specifically LGBTQ, but I find them like queer adjacent and like queer in our hearts when we think of struggles for justice and liberation. So something else you can include are fair trade coffee beans or cocoa beans or fair trade chocolate, to remind us that while we are no longer slaves in Egypt, modern day slavery is very real. And in the coffee bean industry and in the chocolate industry, there's a lot of modern day slavery that still happens. And it's a reminder as consumers that we have the power to make ethical choices as consumers and to make those choices where we have power to do so. A new symbol that I'm excited to include this year is a spoon. So I recently read an article by Rabbi Elliot Kukla, who suggests that we put a spoon on our Seder plate to symbolize the contributions and wisdom of sick and disabled people. The symbol is inspired by spoon theory, which was developed by Christine Miserandino in 2003. And spoon theory is about representing the calculations that sick and disabled people need to make every single day about the energy units that they have for daily tasks. So this, I think, is really resonant for a lot of people as we're in quarantine and as we are all sort of doling out our energy in maybe new ways. I think that it's really important, again, to remember all the wisdom that already exists in our community from sick and disabled folks. Another symbol, I have two more for you. One is a tomato. This looks a bit like a clown nose, but it's a tomato. The Coalition of Immokalee Workers is a widely acclaimed organization of farm workers who are working to end abusive conditions in Florida's tomato fields, which have long created fertile grounds for modern day slavery to flourish. Over the last decade, their campaign for fair food, led by farm workers and supported by people of conscience across the country, has brought about historic changes in the fields. We celebrate their victories while recognizing that much work is left to be done by placing a tomato on our Seder plate. And finally, another symbol you can include is olives. I don't have any olives because I really personally hate olives and didn't want to waste them, but I'm going to put some olive oil on my plate. And that is to symbolize Palestinian solidarity. So those are a few cool new symbols that you might want to try out this year.
Amazing. I know that every year it's powerful to see the way the Seder table can look a little bit different and some new source of conversation or moment of solidarity or work with one another to bring greater justice and liberation to the world is just amazing and powerful. Something else that we wanted to share with you was a new take on some of the questions that we ask during Seder. And Randi is gonna take it away.
Yeah, hi y'all. My name's Randi, she, her. I am calling from the Bay Area. And you know, as we approach Passover, and it's, you know, a very familiar time for us prepping our homes, planning meals, and thinking about, you know, how things are going to be different this year. Many of us have had the experience to, you know, oh, we have to adjust plans for this Passover. You know, someone may not have been able to come to a Seder, or we accidentally burn something, or we forget something on our Seder plate. We misplace the afikomen, or like, I can't remember where we put it. Last year, one of my little tiny humans had a total meltdown at the table. And I think our Seder went from, you know, a quick 20-minute to, okay, we're done. The baby has now melted down. But I think this is one way, you know, we have always made adjustments or made our rituals kind of adapt. And this year, it's very different. And this year, we're broadcasting Seders, and we're thinking of creative ways to make things work. And so as we've been talking about our Passovers and ways in which our communities are both separated and ways in which we might be together with a different community, it made me think a lot about our queer community and how within the queer community or my experience and many experiences is we've had to either make do or adjust our plans. Maybe we are with family who we've spent many Passovers with, and maybe at some point they don't welcome us anymore because of our identity. Maybe we've had to, you know, create a Haggadah that reflected us as a community, our gender and our true selves. I hear often in our queer communities and in my community, you know, we have our family and then we have our chosen family, which is a way of survival. I think for many, it's been a way of survival for me, and knowing that I have my chosen family with me. And so as I was researching all the different Haggadahs and looking at the different questions, you know, we have, why is this night different than any other night? And why do we only eat matzah? Why do we only eat bitter herbs? Why do we dip them twice? And why do we eat while leaning? We always ask these, and these are a part of our ritual that we always have at Passover. But one of the things is I like to look deeper into those questions, especially this year, because this year is very, very different, I think, for many people. And I find every Passover it's different, or I've added something, or I've learned something. Essie, you definitely have taught me a few more for the Seder plate. And so as I was reading a bunch of different Haggadahs and reading, you know, how people have asked these same questions, but in different ways. Why is it matzah? I looked at a couple different resources, and one of an article I read by Diana Rudolph in the Philadelphia Gay News wrote more about Passover questions for LGBTQ families. And as I read this article, I was also reflecting on these questions of how we ask these questions as an LGBTQ community. You know, why is this night different from any other night? But another way to ask that question is, how are we as LGBTQ people and the community different from other people? And how are we the same? You know, how are we connected, and how do we differ in the most beautiful ways? And I have a bunch of different examples of ways in which we can ask these questions, but I would also really love to know from your experiences, what are some questions that you have asked at your Seders, or thought of, or had that long conversation? I know I had a pretty incredible Seder once where we went from talking about one thing and it led to a 3-hour discussion on financial stability and justice for those who may not have been able to afford a very large Seder, you know, and it was just by one question. It was from these 4 questions. But I would love to know, and you can either use the button to raise your hand and say, I'd like to throw in your 2 cents about a question, or go from there. So yeah, any thoughts or questions that you like to ask at Passover? Nobody? None at all? All right, well, I will give you a few more that I think can lead to some really great conversation. That is one of my favorite things about Seders, and also just Shabbat dinners, and taking that time to have conversations. And we might be having these conversations over Zoom or over FaceTime, or maybe you are maybe spending time with a roommate, housemate, and or someone that has never been to a Seder. And these are really great questions to ask. And I just saw it in the chat from Jay Newman, they, them. We Jews were free from Egypt, so who else today needs to be freed and supported like we needed? Yeah, that is a very relevant question, especially with what Essie was saying about the additions to the Seder plate and who else needs to be liberated, not just in the LGBTQ plus community, but all people, is a really, really great question. Any other thoughts or whatnot?
Hi.
Hi.
I'm seeing that it's working. Great. I have a question. I always get really confused when we do the Dayenu because I don't think we mean it. And when we say, you know, Dayenu, like it would have been enough if we'd been freed from Egypt, but like hadn't gotten through the desert safely. And as far as I'm concerned, like that wouldn't have been enough. That would have been really insufficient, actually. And I would like to ask not only, you know, how much do we mean that if we do for all of the things in the Dayenu, but how much in our lives are we like, well, this is enough, like we have gay marriage, I guess that's enough, when it's not enough yet, and what would enough look like? Will it ever really be enough? And what things are we satisfied with? It's all right, and what do we, you know, want to continue towards redemption because we're not actually there yet?
Yeah, it's one of those questions, you know, we have some freedoms, but not everyone has those freedoms. And I think it's something that I hear a lot when I'm doing different education and training for Keshet. People go, oh, yeah, but you have gay marriage, and you use this as an example. And it goes, yeah, but at the same time, if I cross a state line, I may not have the same rights as the state of California and so forth. And that's a really hard concept for people to understand, especially when it comes to like the LGBTQ community adopting or finding housing or, you know, just fundamental human rights. One question that this will be my last little piece. And I just need to scroll up. Oh, I love Zoom. Isn't it fun? Okay. One of the questions that I had, and one of the things that I thought of is, you know, all other nights we eat leavened food. Why tonight only matzah? And to think about how the Israelites had to adapt and quickly get the matzah and not let it rise. And specifically at this Passover, what are some of the adaptations that you've had to make? And how have you as a queer person had to adapt to challenges, good or bad? I think that's a really great question to ask people to see both of our struggles and our celebrations, because I think that we can learn from both in a big way.
Randi, your section is making me think about just like as everyone's been asking these questions, I'm like, well, what are the answers? And then like sitting with that feeling of like, we're not always going to get answers. And I think like right now, a lot of questions that at least that I've been thinking about, we kind of talked about this as a team earlier, of like, when is this going to be over? When it's over, what is it going to look like? How are things going to be different? And like finding the strength to be able to sit with that uncertainty of like, I don't know how. I don't know. And so I don't know, Randi, you were inspiring me. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's okay for us to sit in that silence. And I think it's okay for us to say, I don't know what's going on. We are in a very, I keep saying this, topsy-turvy world. And I bet at some point, you know, the Israelites have said the same thing. Like, when is this going to be over? I don't want this anymore. Or, wow, this is not what I expected it to be. And so I would encourage you, and I have some resources and I will post them in the chat of where I found some of these things and just some of the articles I've read. I would encourage you to maybe revamp your questions or ask the questions, but add in more questions and ways in which we can both connect with ourselves and asking these questions, because we do them every year, but also asking those who are around you, whether it's our chosen quarantine family, our Zoom families, even just ourselves, both reflecting at our Seders and in the days leading up and after Passover, I think is really important just to keep asking these questions and ways in which we can grow from them.
I lead is that okay?
Yeah.
I lead an LGBTQ Seder every year, and we're doing it online this year. And one of the things that I do is I keep the original 4 questions and give them new answers. So like, why on all other nights do we sit up straight at the table, but on this night we recline? The idea is that we always have to hold ourselves tense and rigid in a world that doesn't accept us. But tonight we get to let that go, because this evening is about queer family, and more with the other questions as well.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that, Galia. Randi and Dubs, Essie, you had a thing? You raised your hand for a minute. Just clapping. Yeah, I love that so much. One of the things that really sits with me when I hear that is there are actually answers and experiences that the LGBTQ community has I don't think we're the only community in the world that has experience with figuring out how to continue to be joyful and celebratory and not need all the answers to be finished yet, right? We are one of many communities that have that type of experience, but that's a piece of lived wisdom that we have to offer that I think I wish more people were asking us for right now. Yeah. So I feel like we're moving really fast through the Haggadah, which makes a lot of sense because we're going to be just sort of giving highlights and bits and tastes. But Zora on our education and training team had some commentary about the matzah to share with us.
Great, thank you, Rabbi Micah. Hi everyone, my name is Zora Berman. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm calling from Western Massachusetts. My role at Keshet is the Education Program Associate. And I had some thoughts on matzah and liberation and kind of what I was thinking about in regards to what matzah is making me think about queer liberation. So it's really interesting that for the Passover Seder, we have, everyone has their own traditions, like, oh, the Passover Seder wouldn't be without, Uncle Moishe's funny jokes, or, without matzo ball soup. But actually, Rabbi Gamliel says that there's three things that you need to talk about at the Seder, which are the Passover sacrifice, maror, and also matzah. So matzah is a big deal. It's a big player here, which everyone knows. Also by the huge giant packs of matzah that maybe most of you have at home right now, hoping that you're going to get through. And I was reading a little bit about matzah and kind of this transition from hametz, getting rid of and searching for the chametz, and moving into this place of only having matzah and only eating matzah. And I think that this tension is really ripe for asking some questions about what does this mean for us as queer people and for queer Jews. And so really, some people approach chametz, this, we're getting rid of all of our leaven, we're getting rid of, searching for all of these different things that we're either selling or we're putting in a cabinet and taping up. And really, some people say that this can be a place where we're thinking about getting rid of or cleaning old habits or old ways of thinking, and that this physical act of searching all of the chametz and getting rid of it or removing it is really is a way in which that we get ready for Pesach and for having these discussions of liberation and for really a change. And the first thing that I thought about was like, oh my gosh, we're getting rid of the chametz, that this is, we're getting rid of the old and bringing in the new. Really made me think about how as queer people often, not always, that, and especially as a trans person, that when we're kind of getting rid of the old and getting ready for the new, that there's some other kind of physical change, right? Whether you get a new haircut or you start dressing different, that I was like, oh, wow, like that's so queer, like getting rid of our chametz and kind of like getting into Pesach mode. Like I was like, wow, I really want to riff on that and kind of hear, I think that could be such an exciting place in the Seder to talk about like, well, what was the chametz that you were getting rid of to really kind of step into your fuller selves as queer or trans Jews? And that was really exciting to me. So that's the one piece that I want to share. And the other piece that I was really excited about when I was looking and searching to kind of uplift these pieces to really things that I wanted to offer. Oh, thank you, Essie, chametz, leaven food. Thank you for that, the translation. This other piece that was really exciting to me was this idea of really matzah is what the Jews carried on their back. This idea of that matzah is a reminder of the moment of Exodus, not delayed. The Jewish people were not prepared, and that sometimes these moments of rupture or change can be really abrupt for us as people. And also thinking about how, what chametz have you left behind to feel liberated as a queer person? And what matzah is, ushering you into spring? I'm trying to be mindful of the time here. I wanted to read a short quote to share with everyone. Pesach brings a taste of freedom, declaring that we must give away or put away the normal, the routine, and try something different. That is from Michael Strausfeld, the Jewish Holidays, a guide and commentary, a guide that I really like. And then one more that I wanted to share was that without the taste of freedom, it would be easy to accept slavery as a part of the human fate. And this midrash states that by far the worst part of slavery in Egypt was the fact that the Israelites had come to accept it. And so this idea of matzah is this object that is helping to, an image that is really ushering in freedom. Thank you, midrash is a commentary. Thank you, Essie, for translating. Thinking not only are these places in which we've changed ourselves, but also kind of thinking about what are the pieces of cisnormativity or heteronormativity that we've had to let go of to really also to liberate ourselves and to really step into our fullest selves. So these are the things that I'm thinking about and want to share with you in terms of matzah and liberation, and excited to hear y'all's thoughts.
So what you've got me thinking about, Zora, is, and if somebody else wants to jump in, please jump in. But I have a cookbook sitting on my shelf, and I wish I could stand up and run through that door and go get it. But I have a cookbook sitting on my shelf called Wild Fermentation, and it's a book that's about how to make pickles and yogurt and bread and basically almost anything that would be chametz, right? Literally, the word in Hebrew for pickle it comes from the same root, and the word for vinegar comes from the same root as chametz. And the way this book frames it is actually the yeast, the spores, the life that we need in order to make that is floating around in the air all the time, right? So when I think about Passover and when I think about in pre-modern times, people who were getting rid of everything leavened in their life, they weren't going to the store to buy a jar of Fleischmann's or Red Star yeast again when they were supposed to be getting back into the cycle of making chametz for the next year. But actually, by getting rid of everything that had been sort of fermenting, it's literally starting a whole new food cycle. So you just sort of blew my mind there, which is really cool. And pickles are kosher for Passover. Not all fermentation is leavening, but all leavening is fermentation. And also scientists know more about that than I do. And also rabbis did not have access to all of the science when they made their traditions. I'm not going to tell that story or that joke, but somewhere in the world is a story about rabbis who maybe default to saying no when they don't understand something rather than seeking to understand it. Oh, that's so cool.
Dylan, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I have my hand up. Thank you so much for that Torah, Zora. So great. It was also making me think of another, a Kabbalistic interpretation that I heard like 2 years ago, which is that like hametz, because of the way like leavening and like uplifting and dough rising, it's also about like getting rid of the ego. And so that feels really present right now too, like especially when we're being forced to live so simply. Like how can we also think about matzah as a reminder to get rid of those things that rise within us and are our most frustrating and sometimes reactive emotions and selves. So thank you again.
That was awesome. I had a little snippet that I wanted to share as we're sort of imagining our way through the Seder, and it is the part that comes at the very end of the Magid section, the storytelling section. And usually by this point, we are all so hungry, and we have been talking for a long time, at least in my household with my particular stomach and metabolism. It feels like it has been forever. And then jumps in what I think is the most lively song of the Seder, which is Dayenu. And Leora, you gave us the perfect setup for this, right? Dayenu is a song that basically takes us through the Passover narrative, starting with leading Egypt and then asking, and then what next, right? If God had taken us out of Egypt, but not taken this step and this step and this step and this step, right? Split the sea and brought us through the sea on dry land and had the plagues and swept away the army that was chasing us and given us food in the desert. And oh, by the way, that food in the desert was manna, which was this magical food that could taste like anything. And, right? It puts this question of liberation from Egypt in the context of, and then what comes next and what are you going to do with it? And as we read the story, like, and every step we say, if God had done this one but not that one, Dayenu, it's enough. And it's got the most singable chorus of any Passover song, right? Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. And also a song that is really excellent to make sure can be accessible to non-Hebrew speakers and non-Jewish participants in the Seder, because it's one word that really repeats so much for the chorus. Another excellent reason to love that song. But none of those steps would be enough, right? If we had come out of Egypt and we're running away and Pharaoh's army's chasing us and the sea doesn't split, what happens to us? They catch us, right? If the sea splits and we go through and we get to the desert on the other side, and then no food appears or no water appears in the desert, what happens? We starve, we don't make it. And we spend all this time saying, Dayenu, it's enough, about things that wouldn't actually be enough. And I think that there's actually some deliberate irony in there, right? That it reminds us, actually the thing that feels like the end point is not the goal, right? It was never about, or it can never be about, just marriage equality or just the right to wear whatever clothing one wants in public, or just anti-discrimination laws when it comes to employment and housing. But actually we're singing this song because each one of those things is a huge deal by itself, right? It is not the sum total of what it means to be able to live in a liberated way and to be able to be free from oppression and free from marginalization. But actually something happens to us when, in our quest to continue to make liberation more complete for ourselves and the people around us, when that quest causes us to lose track of the things that have already happened, it can feel really hopeless, right? So we come back, we tell the story, and we remind ourselves, we're not there yet, right? I am convinced that we are, if we're in the desert even, we're still in the desert when it comes to LGBTQ liberation and dignity and equality and freedom. But also, how different is the world that I get to inhabit than the world that my great-grandparents did? And what about the world that 15-year-olds and 10-year-olds and 3-year-olds today, and people who will be born in 20 years, right? That there's so much there that's worth celebrating. So we try to make Dayenu the biggest and the most rowdy part of our Seder before we travel on to eat. And we try to use it as like, there's inspiration there, right? That when we can name something that actually we attained as a community, that's going to help us keep focused on the next thing. We have one more segment that we're going to present as Keshet staff, as the education and training team. And then after we do that, I'd love to open it up for more questions, comments, favorite pieces of yours. But Dubs is going to close us out on our presentation by talking about storytelling.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Dubs Weinblatt. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. And I am an Associate Director of Education and Training for Metro New York at Keshet. That's the first time I've said that new title. So just practicing, thank you. And yeah, storytelling, it's, for me, storytelling is very important. And I for some reason, I forgot the connection between Passover and storytelling until Essie was like, hey, how about this thing that that you know a lot about? So I appreciate that connection, Essie, very much. So the ritual of storytelling is a crucial and sacred part of Judaism, passing down our traditions, sharing our truths and our resilience. And this is especially resonant during Passover. So when I think of Passover, a major theme that pops out to me is a story of oppression to freedom, being passed over as a certain group of people, and then coming together as a community and moving towards liberation. And it also reminds me of coming out process, and that so many queer folks go through at certain points in their lives over and over. We are never done coming out. We're never done sharing our truths. And I was in a text study earlier today, and I learned something new, which, so Pesach is the Hebrew word for Passover, but when you break it apart, peh is a mouth, and sach is to speak. So it's like speaking your truth, which I thought was very resonant and poignant, and was kind of bummed that I didn't know that before this morning. But we're all learning at all points in our lives. And also, as my brilliant colleague Essie reminded me, that Pesach is a time we remember our exodus from Mitzrayim, which literally means narrow place, which is reminiscent of coming out of the closet and being open and honest and fully ourselves, which I just love the way that they said that. So I just read it verbatim. And so when I'm not working at Keshet, one of the projects that I work on is a storytelling show and a podcast, both called Thank You for Coming Out. And the sole purpose of this show is to give LGBTQ people the opportunity to share their stories, to share their experiences with, among other LGBTQ people and folks who are allies and not part of our community. And what is really, really special to me is that even though our stories are all very different, when we share them, we're all able to find different pieces that we connect with and that resonate with us. And that starts to build empathy and build community, which for me is super duper important. And then one of the pieces of the storytelling show is that once the monologist has shared their story, there's a group of LGBTQ improvisers that actually bring that story to life on the spot, using the different details from the story. And what's so interesting to me is that, when I'm telling my story, we all have rehearsed our coming out stories in our heads, when we're talking to people. But when we're sharing it to a group of people who've never heard it before, they pick up on details that you might not even be thinking about. And so it's really neat to see what improvisers do when they see, when they hear your story or the story that's being told, and also help reimagine something that can potentially be really painful. And find the humor and find the ways that we can kind of heal from the potential trauma that we faced in either being in the closet or coming out and then maybe not having such a positive experience afterwards. Storytelling really is a way to inspire us. It shows our resilience. It helps us feel less alone. It preserves our history, and it also helps us pave the way for other people. It also helps us learn from our mistakes and not make those mistakes again, because we have said, hey, like, maybe this isn't the best way to handle this kind of situation or that kind of situation. So I want to open this up, so I stop talking at you, and I have some questions that I'd love to hear from some folks. Which the first question from me to you is, why does storytelling feel important to you, either in a Passover scenario or in a bigger zoomed out scenario?
I'll jump in. Dylan, he, him. So there are two things that come to mind when I think of that question. And one, there was a podcast I listened to, unnamed at this point, just in my brain, but there's like this psychological phenomenon that when someone's like arguing with you or trying to persuade you to do something, there are lots of parts in your brain that light up that try to block whatever you're taking in. But when you're listening to a story, those mental defenses actually don't light up in the brain. And so it's much easier to convey something when it's under the framework of a story, because people are not on guard neurologically. And so I found that to be very true in my prior work, like as an organizer, that instead of, when I worked for a union, which is what I did before working at Keshet, that in order to bring people along, I would often tell a story of myself or of the union at large, and it was able to build something bigger and bring people into our movement. And so I think storytelling is a really important way that I've experienced in building community, because it creates space for people to see themselves in something bigger.
Thanks, Dylan.
I have something to share.
Great.
I'm Aviva, and I use she, her pronouns. I have done a lot of musical theater, and I've also been an audience member. And I've learned that there's something universal to those kinds of stories as well. In particular, I think that one of the most Jewish musicals of all time is Les Mis. And kind of like, you look at that story and it's not really about a Jewish person, but you can kind of see Judaism through your Jewish lens. And I think that can be carried across many stories. Like, if you say the facts, like, this character dealt with oppression in this particular way, or like, this person went through this thing and that thing. Like, if you like tell the story in a more cohesive way with like an arch, and like, there will be something that resonates with everyone. So I think that storytelling is it's kind of, because it's an art form, it has the ability to resonate with many different types of people.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that. I also am a musical theater person, and in seeing different shows, and particularly the one I'm thinking about now is Jagged Little Pill on Broadway. And being able to, there are a few different queer characters in the show, and none of them actually hold the identities that all of the same identities that I hold. And yet the way that the story is told, it still feels very resonant, and still feels like I'm able to empathize and relate to the character. So what you were saying, Aviva, is that like just really resonated with me too, of like being able to find those universal truths, and it helps shorten the distance between us and between our stories, and helps to build that community, like Dylan was saying.
I'm gonna jump in here as well, because Aviva, you sparked, as I said earlier, a lightning rod, a little light bulb thing going on for me. I have a background in theater and performance, because, you know, why not? I want to be like Dubs as well, just kind of going from there. But one of the things that I learned when I was training in school for theater and performance is like, your job as an actor or your job as a storyteller is to take someone on a journey. And for someone to go on that journey, and when we can stop thinking about sheltering in place, if we can stop thinking about our cell phones, if we can stop thinking. And for me, when I'm on that journey, and this has happened in Jagged Little Pill and numerous shows, whether they're professional Broadway shows or they're moments in, shul, if I stop breathing and I take that one intake of that breath with that person who's telling that story, I'm on that journey with them. And one of the beautiful things about Judaism, I find, is that we don't have history, we have memories. And for us to share those memories together and really feel that and have that full story is something that I find the beauty of storytelling, the beauty of Torah, the beauty of retelling this story every year can be special in any different way that you want. And it can mean the journey is different for every single person in that room, every single person at that table, every single person. And I find that really important about storytelling as well. So just wanted to riff with y'all.
Thanks, Randall. I have many more questions, Micah, but I'm also mindful of time. So shall we move on? You're muted.
Yep. Let's do one more question for everyone that can kind of close us out with this conversation.
Okay, great. So I would love to hear from a time when you have experienced being changed on a molecular level by a story that you've heard, or a time that you shared a story and could feel the change in the room.
Hi, I'm Nina, she, her, or they, them. And I think the one thing that immediately popped into my head was when I was probably like 11, maybe, I read a story about a woman who was an abortion provider in Kansas, where I live, and what it was like being an abortion provider in the Midwest. And that immediately made me change what I wanted to do at 11 from being a preschool teacher to wanting to be a doctor and provide abortions in Kansas. And that's a huge leap from, I was 11, so kids change thoughts and ideas about what they want to do all the time, but that's still something that I've stuck with as something that I want to do because of that one story that I read.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really, really incredible, and I have full body chills and awesome.
A thought that I have sort of on the other side of that is I do LGBTQ programming and trainings for like Jewish organizations, and I walk in the room and I don't look like what they think a queer person should look like, and it doesn't click for them. And the moment I use myself as an example in my trainings, which I do when I need to pack an emotional punch, that is the moment that people jump on board with me. When I let them know what I experienced during high school, what like legal or educational ramifications I've experienced because of my identity, that is when people feel more connected to me and the content that I'm presenting, because it's suddenly become personal.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, the whole education team is on this call right now. And I think we talk about this a lot, of bringing ourselves to trainings and making it personal, but also then trying to find the boundary of making sure we're not giving too much of ourselves. And also thinking too, we have time if you still want to keep sharing, but something that popped up because Randy sent me a message about Ring of Keys, which is a song seen in the musical Fun Home. And it's this moment of visibility, and young Allison sees this like butch lesbian come into the cafe and has like this like butch haircut and like boots and like has a ring of keys on her belt, and she's like taken aback because she's never seen someone like this before, and she sees herself in this person, and it changed small Al. It changed her on a molecular level. Say that once. It's hard. And so, anyways, so theater, bringing ourselves to trainings, has such a power, and also just that visibility of when we're sharing our stories or when we're showing up in the world in an authentic way. Even if we don't know, we might be a ring of keys moment to somebody else and be like, oh, I can be that, and like giving us permission for that. Anyone else have a story that they want to share, either that they experienced or that they told? That's great. Keep thinking about it. Micah, I will pass the baton. Is that a sports reference? Back to you.
It might be a sports reference.
I don't know.
Not so much with the sports. Thank you. And thanks so much to everyone for being here and for talking, for sharing, for asking questions. I love Passover, and I love the Seder, particularly because, Dubs, exactly what you were saying about how it has the ability to take the sort of the big picture Jewish story from being this abstract set of values or set of instructions or set of rituals, and forces us to try our best to be storytellers, teachers, questioners, and people who are vulnerable. And I want to bring all of this energy and all of these intentions with me to Seder in just a few nights. It's my hope for everyone who's on this call and for everyone who's everywhere, that we have the opportunity to bring our whole selves to whatever community building, celebration in our own homes or on the internet, or with readings and books, or in our own hearts and minds we might be doing for Passover this year. That we can make our whole selves present, and that we can bring and know deep down in our guts that we have wisdom, experience, knowledge that we bring to this tradition to make it alive, and to keep us getting better year after year. Thank you so much to everyone. I really appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful, a sweet, a happy, and a joyful Passover.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hag Sameach.
Thank you. Hag
And I would
Sameach.
I'd love to see many of you at the LGBTQ Seder next Sunday.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for doing that and for sharing that.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.